Welcome, everyone. Ready to unlock some serious brain power? We're about to dive deep into learning, especially for those tricky subjects like math and science.
Whether you're a total beginner or already pretty good, stick with us. It's all about uncovering your brain's hidden potential.
We'll be drawing insights from the early chapters of A Mind for Numbers.
A fantastic book by Barbara Oakley.
Yeah, her story is incredible.
She actually hated math and science in school. Like,
Yeah.
really hated it. Even flunked some classes.
But guess what?
She ended up an engineering professor. Talk about a turnaround.
Exactly. So this deep dive isn't just about math and science themselves, it's about how to learn anything effectively.
She really understands the struggles people face,
Hmm.
and she figured out powerful ways to overcome them.
I'm already hooked, and one of the first things that jumped out at me was this idea of focused mode and diffuse mode, two totally different ways our brains think.
It's like having two mental gears, right?
Totally. So, focused mode, what's
Yeah.
that all about?
Think of it like a spotlight. Great for concentrating on one specific task, especially if you're already familiar with it.
Okay, so like working through a math problem step by step.
Exactly. You're using that focused mode.
Makes sense. But then what about diffuse mode? Sounds a bit more mysterious.
Diffuse mode is more like a lantern wider, softer light.
Okay.
It helps you see the bigger picture, make connections you wouldn't in focused mode.
Ah, so that's where those aha moments come from, like when you step away from a problem and the solution just pops into your head.
Precisely. It's happening even when you're not actively working on something.
That's wild. The book uses this cool pinball analogy to explain it. Focused thinking, pinball bouncing rapidly between closed bumpers.
Very precise, but can get stuck easily.
And diffuse thinking, it's like a pinball machine with those bumpers spread way out.
Thoughts can roam more freely, making those unexpected connections.
I'm starting to see why sometimes just staring harder at a problem doesn't work.
We need both modes to really learn, especially for tricky stuff like math and science. They need both the details and the big picture.
Okay, so we've got these two modes, but our brains don't just naturally switch between them all the time, right?
You got it. And that's where things get really interesting and practical.
How do we get better at toggling between these modes? Like, is there a secret switch?
Not quite a switch, but the book gives some great insights. Turns out things like procrastination can actually hinder our ability to tap into that diffuse mode.
Uh-oh. Procrastination. Now you're talking my language. But how does putting things off affect how we think?
Think about it. When you procrastinate, you're cramming everything into focus mode at the last minute.
Oh, no time for my brain to wander and make those connections.
Exactly. No time for the diffuse mode magic to happen. It's like trying to force puzzle pieces together without looking at the picture on the box.
Great analogy. So, tackling procrastination seems key. The book mentions the Pomodoro technique. Maybe that could help.
Absolutely. It's a simple but powerful way to structure your work, encouraging both focused and diffuse thinking.
I've heard of that, but thought it was just for time management.
It's more than that. You work in short, focused bursts, usually 25 minutes, then take a short break.
So those breaks, they're not just for rest.
Nope. They're like mental reset buttons. Your brain can shift gears.
Ah, so we're giving our subconscious a chance to work in the background during those breaks, even if we don't realize it.
Exactly. Making those connections that you wouldn't see in focused mode, like letting bread dough rise. Got to give those ingredients time to interact and create something delicious.
Okay, that makes sense. Two thinking modes, we can encourage switching between them with techniques like Pomodoro and by avoiding procrastination. This is giving me a whole new perspective on learning.
And that's just the beginning. There's so much more to uncover. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk about why math, in particular, seems so difficult for many people.
It's not just procrastination, right? There's something about math itself that trips us up.
You're right. Math relies heavily on abstract symbols and concepts, which can be tough for our brains to grasp. Our brains evolved to understand concrete things, things we can see and touch.
So picturing a tree is easy, but a plus sign or a square root symbol, those are ideas, not actual objects.
Exactly. It's like trying to decipher a secret code. Math pushes us beyond those easy pictures and into abstract thinking.
No wonder it can feel daunting.
And to make things even trickier, those abstract math symbols are often what we call encrypted. One symbol can mean a whole bunch of different operations or ideas.
Like learning a new language where the words keep changing their meaning.
Precisely. This abstract, encrypted nature of math is a major reason why people struggle. But by understanding how our brains work and using the right learning strategies,
There's hope?
absolutely, we can unlock our mathematical potential. It's not about being good or bad at math. It's about learning the language and training our brains to think in these new ways.
This is giving me hope. But it's not just the abstractness of math that can trip us up, right? The book mentions the Einstellung effect, which sounds kind of scary.
It can be. It's
Mm.
our tendency to get stuck in old ways of thinking, even when they're not working anymore. Like
Yeah.
trying to force a square peg into a round hole just because that's what you've always done.
So we miss out on simpler, more elegant solutions because our brains are clinging to those familiar patterns. I can definitely relate.
We all can. It's a natural part of how our brains work. But by becoming aware of it, we can become more flexible thinkers.
Okay, but how do we break free from those mental ruts? It's easy to know we're stuck, but harder to actually change.
One technique is to force yourself to consider different approaches, even if they seem weird at first. Before jumping to your usual method, ask, what's a totally different way I could do this?
So shake things up a bit, introduce some randomness to disrupt those well-worn pathways.
Exactly. And remember that Pomodoro technique we talked about? Those breaks are like mental reset buttons, too.
I'm seeing how it's way more than just time management. It's actively encouraging that dance between focused and diffuse thinking.
And it addresses another big obstacle, procrastination. Breaking tasks into smaller chunks, building in those rewards, it makes the whole process less daunting.
This is making me rethink my whole approach to studying and projects. It's not about willpower alone, it's about understanding how my mind works and working with it.
And those breaks don't have to be fancy. Sometimes, just shifting your focus for a few minutes is enough to trigger that diffuse mode. Look out the window, listen to music, do a quick stretch, anything that helps.
Like giving your brain permission to daydream, wander off the path and see where it leads.
In a way, yes. Creating space for unexpected connections.
I'm appreciating those unproductive moments more and more. Maybe daydreaming isn't so bad after all.
Balance is key. We need both focused attention and mental downtime. And this isn't just for math and science. It applies to any field that needs creativity, problem solving, deep understanding.
So whether it's a tough equation, writing a novel, or just grasping a new concept, these strategies can help us learn better, unlock our potential.
Exactly. It's a shift from working harder to working smarter, understanding our minds and using that to our advantage.
I'm really getting this. It's not about magically becoming a math whiz. It's about building understanding, developing the right mental habits for long-term learning.
And as we keep exploring a mind for numbers, we'll find even more practical strategies. But before we get there, let's take a detour back to the world of chess.
Ooh, a chess story. I'm in.
It's about Magnus Carlsen, the chess prodigy, playing against Garry Kasparov. It perfectly illustrates the power of switching between focused and diffuse thinking, even at the highest levels.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So, picture this. Intense speed chess game. Carlsen does something that surprises everyone. He gets up and walks away from the board in the middle of the match.
Wow, bold move. Why would you step away from a game that needs such focus?
That's what makes this so insightful. It wasn't just a mind game or trying to psych out his opponent. Carlsen was strategically triggering his diffuse mode.
So while Kasparov stayed laser-focused, Carlsen's brain was free to wander, making connections Kasparov might have missed.
Exactly. Even someone at the top of their game benefits from switching between these thinking modes. It's not about being a genius, it's about understanding how your brain works and using it to your advantage.
And that's something we can all learn to do.
Absolutely. These strategies are available to everyone. We can all learn to harness the power of focused and diffuse thinking to learn better and tackle tough problems.
I'm already seeing things differently. Instead of being intimidated by math, I'm seeing it as a puzzle to solve, a mystery to unravel. And I'm excited to learn more about the tools and techniques we can use.
That's the spirit. And we'll do just that as we continue our deep dive into A Mind for Numbers. We'll explore specific examples, practical strategies, and even the fascinating world of memory and how it plays a role in effective learning.
This is already mind-blowing. I can't wait to keep going. That Carlsen story is amazing. It's like he was playing a whole different level of chess, outsmarting Kasparov, not just with the moves, but by how he was thinking.
It really shows you, even in a field that seems like it's all about intense focus, shifting gears mentally can lead to breakthroughs.
Makes you wonder if we underestimate the power of unfocusing in other parts of life too. Like when you're stuck creatively or on a project, maybe stepping back is the key.
Definitely worth thinking about. The book goes into how those aha moments often happen when we least expect them because our conscious mind isn't forcing it.
Okay, so back to this Einstellung effect. Getting stuck in that mental groove, doing things the same old way, even when it's not the best. Can you give an example of what that looks like, in real life?
Imagine trying to connect 9 dots with 4 straight lines without lifting your pen. Classic puzzle.
Yeah, I've seen that one. It's harder than it looks.
Exactly. Most people struggle because they assume they have to stay within the square formed by the dots.
Ah, that's the mental rut, the Einstein.
Right. But the solution needs you to think outside that box. Literally.
So by assuming we have to stay within the square, we miss the answer that needs us to go beyond those boundaries. Our assumptions really limit us.
And the book points out this isn't just for visual puzzles. It shows up in how we solve math problems, make decisions, even daily habits. Recognizing those ruts is the first step to breaking free.
But how do you actually do that? Knowing you're stuck is one thing, but changing is tougher.
One technique is forcing yourself to think of other ways to approach it, even if they sound strange at first. Don't just jump to your usual method. Ask yourself, what's a completely different way I could do this?
So shake up the routine, a bit of randomness to disrupt those brain pathways.
Precisely. And do you remember the Pomodoro technique? Those breaks act like reset buttons for your mind.
Yeah, it's way more than just time management, right? Actively switching between those focused and diffuse modes.
And it helps with procrastination too. Smaller chunks, built-in rewards, it's less overwhelming.
I'm rethinking my whole approach to studying, not just brute forcing it with willpower, understanding my mind and working with it.
Those breaks don't need to be anything fancy either. Sometimes just shifting your focus for a couple minutes does the trick to trigger that diffuse mode. Look out the window, music, a quick stretch.
It's like giving your brain permission to daydream, see where it wanders.
In a way, yeah. Make space for those unexpected connections to pop up.
I'm liking those unproductive moments more and more. Daydreaming might not be so bad after all.
It's all about balance, focused attention, and mental downtime. And this isn't just for math and science. This applies to anything that needs creativity, problem solving, deep understanding.
So whether it's a complex equation, writing a novel, or even just getting a new concept, these strategies can help us learn better, be our best.
Exactly. Shifting from work harder to work smarter.
I'm getting it. It's not about instantly being a math whiz. It's about building that understanding, the right mental habits for learning that sticks.
And we'll find more strategies in A Mind for Numbers. But before we move on, let's go back to that chess story for a sec. It made me think about how we see learning as this purely mental thing happening only in our heads. But Carlson actually got up, moved his body. That seems important too.
Yeah, it's like our bodies and minds are connected, and sometimes changing one can change the other.
Exactly. The book talks about how our physical and mental states are linked. Even simple things like posture or taking a walk can affect our thinking.
It's like they're in constant communication. A change in one can spark a shift in the other.
Precisely. The book even mentions how our physical environment, things like lighting, noise, even the color of the room, can impact how well we learn and solve problems.
Wow, that's fascinating. We could optimize our learning spaces to make those aha moments happen more often.
It's a great area to explore. But for now, let's focus on another crucial part of learning memory. After all, what's the point of knowledge if we can't remember it? The book has some surprising insights into how memory works and how to improve it.
Perfect timing. I'm ready to dive into the world of memory and uncover those secrets. It's like we're unlocking a treasure chest of learning strategies, and I can't wait to see what gems we find next. It's like we've been on this amazing mental journey from those laser-focused spotlights to those wide-open fields of thought, and now we're stepping into the memory palace where all this learning we've been talking about gets stored.
It is fascinating. And what's cool is the book shows us memory isn't just this passive storage unit. It's an active process, something we can actually get better at with the right techniques.
Okay, so let's talk techniques. I've always struggled with remembering things, especially when it comes to math and science. Are there practical tips that can actually make a difference?
Absolutely. One of the most powerful is spaced repetition. The idea is you're more likely to remember something if you revisit it at longer and longer intervals.
So instead of cramming everything at once, you space out your study sessions, come back to it over time. Seems kind of counterintuitive.
It does. But think about it each time you revisit that info. You're strengthening the connections in your brain, making it stick long term.
Like building a strong bridge instead of a flimsy rope swing. Every time you go back to the material, you're reinforcing the structure.
Perfect analogy. And the book gives practical tips on how to do this using flashcards or even apps to schedule those review sessions strategically.
This is making me realize that forgetting might not be such a bad thing. Like, it's part of the process. And by actually embracing those moments of forgetting, we can end up with stronger memories in the long run.
Exactly. The book also talks about active recall, basically testing yourself on the stuff you're trying to learn.
So instead of just passively rereading notes, we should be actively trying to pull the information from our memory.
You got it. It's like working out a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. By quizzing ourselves, we make our brains work harder and those connections solidify.
That makes sense. It's like watching someone play basketball versus getting out there and shooting hoops yourself. Way more effective to be actively involved.
And the book suggests simple ways to do this. Create practice questions, summarize things in your own words, even teach the material to someone else. All that makes you actively engage and you're more likely to remember.
I'm seeing a theme here. Actively engaging with the material, whether it's through spaced repetition, active recall, or even those moments of unfocusing to let our diffuse mode work its magic.
You nailed it. It's about being an active participant in the learning process, not just passively soaking up info.
This whole deep dive has been eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new set of tools to tackle learning, especially those subjects that used to scare me.
And remember, it's a journey, not a race. The book encourages a growth mindset. Embrace the challenges, celebrate those aha moments along the way.
It's not about being perfect or instantly becoming a genius. It's about understanding how our brains learn best and using that knowledge to unlock our own potential.
Exactly. And the best part is, these techniques aren't just for math and science. They work for anything you want to learn or master.
This has been incredible. So, to wrap things up, what's one final takeaway you'd like to leave everyone with?
Approach learning with curiosity and a sense of play. Don't be afraid to try things out. Find what works for you.
Love that. Learning shouldn't be a chore. It should be an adventure full of discovery. And hey, you're not alone on this journey. There are tons of resources like A Mind for Numbers to help you along the way.
So embrace the challenge, stay curious, and never stop learning.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've learned some valuable insights and are feeling inspired to unlock your own learning superpowers. Until next time, happy learning.